looking at what are the positives and negatives around data centers. So how much tax revenue do they really bring in? And what I've noticed is that all states will reduce and give these huge tax write-offs to allow them to come into the state. And so when they're supposed to be bringing in like $1 billion, half of that is gone from tax write-offs. So if we're gonna have them, I wanna make sure that we tax them properly. I wanna make sure that we can guarantee that jobs, infrastructure are not just a one-time thing, but they're consistently coming from them. So that's one of the businesses that are coming. And if we don't get a hold of that, we're gonna miss out on revenue and they're gonna be here anyway. And that's a lot of the times what happens.
As it pertains to our aging population, I think a lot about, some of it is the housing with like making homestead exemption portable, and making it so that people are able to leave their, perhaps home that they raised their family in and downsize so that a family can then move into that home. But that matters because people feel stuck because how can you even afford a new mortgage with things happening the way that they are? So that's a part of it. Medicaid and just medical insurance is huge in this aspect. Medicaid takes up about 1/3 of our state budget, and when we have TABOR, that really limits the amount that we are able to spend on these really important social services for all people, but especially for those who need more medical attention, who need more prescriptions. We got to figure out this TABOR piece, and this issue is not going away. We need to, we've got some ballot measures coming up this fall to help us figure that piece out, because each year is just going to be as bad as this one. And so figuring out how we deal with the finances of making sure that we are giving folks the opportunity to get all the medicine they need so they're not choosing rent over food versus their prescriptions. And those are the things that I have worked on, some pharmacy bills and things like that are kind of practical, everyday things that can help our seniors.
You just heard Sarah offer some solutions or objectives in terms of the senior population. As someone who's serving in that capacity right now, are those ideas doable or are they idealistic? What do you think when you hear those ideas brought forward? Is that something that can be done in those ways as a solution to address the aging population?
Yeah, believe me, I'm in favor of making corporations pay their fair share in taxes, period, no matter what it is for any issue, and we especially need that here in the state of Colorado. I think that my philosophy on government is that it is actually there to serve the greater good, and it is meant to be for the most vulnerable among us, like a safety net, and I do consider our aging population one of those vulnerable groups. And as much as it's awesome when community organizations or businesses come forward to work on these issues, me specifically is like in this role, I'm coming at it as a policymaker from this particular state institution and what is our obligation to citizens of the state of Colorado. And I don't know that we can always rely on businesses or community organizations to do that. When they can, that's great. But it is incumbent upon the people making these policies to do our work on this as well. Data centers is a whole other issue, but
Let's stay on the story just 1 second, and I'll give you an example of something that we hear about frequently. That is, there is a sizable population in Aurora of seniors who have essentially liquidated everything they own so they can go on Medicaid, and then they go into assisted living, and that's their lifestyle is through Social Security and then Medicaid. Would both of you or either of you be willing to carve out Medicaid funds saying this will not be touched to protect those people that are in assisted living only because of Medicaid that would be homeless without it? Would you carve out a protection for that in the state budget?
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Okay. And
yeah, same here. And I actually ran a bill my first session that dealt with this particular issue on people getting into these kinds of facilities, and heartbreaking to know what the lived experience is of folks. My parents aren't quite here yet, so I've not dealt with it in my own family. But this liquidation piece of like, you are too wealthy to qualify for this, and so you get rid of everything that you own and sell everything so that you can qualify to live in this place, you know, for the remainder of your years. And it's a bad, broken system. It's not working, and we need to figure something else out. And this is something that I would advocate for.
Okay, let's go back to the donkey in the room here for the Democratic Party. If the legislature was in session right now and both or either of you had a seat in the House, would you vote to impeach Governor Polis over his move with Tina Peters? Sorry?
No, I would not. I'm a person that actually reads because I think that's important as a legislator. And so I looked at the totality of what Tina Peters did, the minimums, the maximums. I'm not an attorney, but I hope to be one day. And then considering her background, not having any criminal history, and then they landed on 9 years. They could have sentenced her to more, but they absolutely could have sentenced her to less. And so he made a decision that he felt like after she was there for 2 years, she'll be out in June, and as a 72-year-old woman, she's done enough time. I don't think that is a reason to impeach your governor, because the one thing that I notice, especially in politics, is the moment that someone doesn't do something that you like, all rationale is out of the window. There's no more there's no more talking, there's no more anything. You didn't do something I like, you're done. And so no, I would not support impeaching the governor for that.
Thank you for the question. I don't think I would impeach either, cast that actual vote, partly out of a practical, in our legislature, you would need to have more votes than we even have to do it. I do agree on if you threaten or you do impeachment anytime somebody does something that you don't like, then it just becomes a tit for tat on both parties of how we do things. And I don't know that that's the best way. We obviously, as a party, censure the governor. I'm wholeheartedly in support of that because I couldn't disagree more with what he decided to do with Tina Peters. Whether I think she did do something quite criminal and quite dangerous that endangered even the idea that our elections are fair, and so I think that she needs to be held accountable for that. I think of members of our own community who don't get the same kind of reprieve on things when they are incarcerated, and I listen to some of my colleagues at the Well very often in the House talk about this woman in prison, but they do not give that same grace or concern for many of our community members, Black and brown folks who are incarcerated. And so I look at that, and it does seem, it seems a little gross that if you get enough press on an issue, then you can be given more grace than other communities.
Another issue that is tied with affordable housing and growth in Colorado has to do with the availability of water. And there is an argument saying that the reason why housing became unaffordable was we weren't building fast enough to keep up with demand, and so the market prices went up. On the other hand, there are communities all across Colorado that continue to build that do not have sustainable water sources. And at one point, we're all going to suffer from that. Is it time for the state legislature to step in and say, if UConn cannot prove that a community has sustainable water sources to sustain the development, they cannot issue building permits anymore? And a good example of this would be Douglas County. Sarah, do you want to start?
Yeah, that's fine. So for me, when it comes to water policy, that is something that I absolutely have to be more educated on. I think that a lot of the times people will just say like the touch points about things, but the more that I look into water and how that affects building and construction and the overall and then us being in a drought, all of those things that are taking place. For me, in order to determine whether I would agree or disagree with that kind of policy, I would need to bring experts in, the ones that do agree and the ones that do not agree, so that I can hear and understand the full scope of what's going on, and then make a decision there. So to answer that question, I would not be in a position at this time to decide whether or not I would make changes around water policy in the state legislature.
That's okay.
Lindsay?
I would 100% look at our water usage as a reason to allow or disallow permits. Oddly enough, I was placed on the House Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee when I joined the legislature, which was kind of a strange fit considering that I live in Aurora and represent HD42, but I actually asked to stay on that committee and remain on it to this day because so much of the water issues are important. Even though we don't have rivers, large rivers flowing through Aurora, we absolutely are impacted by these water issues. And it also plays into my feelings on data centers too. But we are facing some severe water problems, droughts. The Colorado River is not providing as it has. Our snowpack is low. We have real issues. And we cannot willy-nilly be creating new infrastructures when we can't even manage the demands that we have now. In our state, we are building reservoirs, we are flooding valleys so that we have water available for us even here in Aurora. We are facing an issue where Aurora goes and purchases land down in rural areas, and so that we can have those water rights just to make sure that the residents of Aurora have water, which is really important, and we deserve it. We need to have water. But we also need to recognize this is a limited resource. And the way that things are working right now, we absolutely have to be looking at every aspect, from building, how we do landscaping, how we encourage businesses like data centers that use huge amounts of water.
A yes or no question, and I've heard a lot today about the divide within the Democratic Party, and this is a primary. So this is another step in the ultimate step. If you are not successful in this bid for election, would you be supportive of your opponent in as much as you'll even endorse and be on the website and support and move forward in terms of the candidacy in this seat? That's a yes or no question. Whoever would like to go first.
No, I would not, because I do not believe that she's qualified, and that is truly what I believe. She's been here for 4 years. She has not done anything specifically to really impact the overall improvement of HD42.
Okay.
Can I continue, please?
Please, go ahead.
In addition, I want to point out that there was a bill that came up which went to her Capital Construction Committee. Mind you, the majority of the people on the bill were no, but this bill would have specifically brought a mental health facility into HD42, created 156 jobs, and created 50 beds. She was absent for that vote. If you give grace, you can still have someone come and vote for you. And so no, I would not support her because I do not believe she's qualified.
Mandy, you also have a yes or no and a follow-up.
Yeah, I would support whoever wins the primary because they will be the representative for HD42, and it's important that we are successful in banding together to make sure we are fighting for good policies in 42. So whoever is elected for any seat that represents the area that I live, I will be supporting them and encouraging them and getting votes out for them, because obviously we don't want Republicans in these seats, so I will 100% support whoever wins the primary. On this front, yes, Capital Development Committee is a very cool committee. This particular day we were voting on a letter of recommendation. It wasn't the bill, and the bill wouldn't have created those beds. It was actually to approve a ballot measure so that this would go on the ballot, which I actually think this year, when we have many financial things coming on the ballot, like dealing with graduated income tax, I actually don't agree that we should be putting these things on the ballot. I also had a follow-up x-ray from my hip replacement that I had in November. So, and it wouldn't have passed the committee anyway, and that doesn't speak to my support for behavioral health or Aurora mental health. That's how the process at the Capitol works.
Okay. We, as a part of the planning process, ask candidates to submit questions that they would like to have asked. What I would like to do right now is give you an opportunity to ask your opponent a question directly. And Mandy, we'll start with you.
I guess I'm curious as to my opponent about moving into the district just in the last year or so. What makes you think that this year of experience of living here sets you up for knowing the community well, knowing all the parts of it? Because obviously we have rules about who can run, and the timeline meets that. But I think that I'm not quite sure how you plan on representing a community that you've lived in for 1 year.
Well, that's very interesting. No one's ever asked me that. So I've actually lived here my whole entire life. My kids just graduated from college 2 years ago. We lived in Southeast Aurora by Eagle Crest. We downsized, my husband and myself, and we moved to Aurora. I've had my first business on Colfax, or my mom had her first business on Colfax and Chambers. Mine was on Chambers in Mississippi. I've worked in Aurora. I graduated from school in Aurora. I went to South Middle School. I went to Yale Elementary. I've lived in Aurora all my life, so that's just a weird question because this is where I am from. And so I'm not gonna say, you're not from Aurora, but I actually am. The other thing is, how can I represent the community? Prior to even considering about running for office, I've been in community. I had a shop right next to Brother Jeff on Welton. The first legislation I've ever helped run helped thousands of people get pardons for criminal convictions around cannabis. And so I'm not doing this because I feel like I want to be a politician. I'm doing this because we need proper representation in 42, and you just have not done that. And if you had, I would not be here having this conversation, because my career goal is not to be a politician. My career goal is to be an attorney.
You can ask a question.
I don't have a question for her.
I have a question. One more, and then it looks like we're just about out of time here, but speaking to the people who are not going to vote on your race here in this primary, either because they're unaffiliated and don't want to do that, or they're Republicans, one of the criticisms that the current administration and legislature has suffered is that Democrats are soft on crime. And do you think that the Democratic Party and this past legislature and the governor have well addressed this balance between restorative justice and public safety, or do you think it's swung too far? And if you were going to suggest some bills, where would you fall on that? Let's start with Rip Lindsay on this one.
Yeah, I think this is a real balance. Obviously at the legislature, you have, even in the Democratic Party, different views on how to handle these things. I think I view it from a very specific lens of HD 42, where unfortunately many of the police killings occur in the borders of this particular district, and that is a real thing, a real concern for members of the community who live here. But then also, when you knock on doors, there are people who will also tell you, I hear gunshots repeatedly every night or down the street, and what are we going to do about that? And so it's not a one aspect of less policing, or because people have very nuanced views. They want to feel safe in their community. I think the problem is people don't feel safe with the police that we have or the force that we have now, and so we got to figure that out.
Do you think the party's on the right track then?
I do. do. I think in general, we are working on some policy that can do some good. I think I'm kind of a lefty, so sometimes it's not as much as I would like or in the same fashion that I would like, but we are balancing, especially as a state legislature. A lot of the policing issues are municipal and are dealt with more at that level, and so at the state level, I think we do vote from a state perspective of, it's not like I am considering Aurora all the time, but as a state, we're not just voting on policies, for Aurora.
Sarah?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. Most of the unarmed black men have been killed in HD 42, and Representative Lindsay hasn't worked on any policing bills. My number one big bill that I want to work on is a policing bill around mental health. So police are coming in with implicit bias, and then what happens is they're not from your community, so they have a cultural competency issue as well. And then they're policing, and their implicit bias is consistently being enforced, and every single issue that they face is one of trauma. And so the police are only required to have one mental health evaluation, and that's upon going into the academy. I want to require a mental health evaluation once per year as something that is more preventative versus punitive, but it's an opportunity to make sure that we have police officers that are mentally healthy and mentally sound. In addition to that bill package, I want to require them to ride along with mental health clinicians versus what happens now where a mental health clinician will ride along with them, and that will be the training. And then I want to focus on trauma-enforced training. And so in my belief, this will not only trickle down into how policing happens in HD 42, but throughout the whole state, because we have to have police officers that are mentally healthy and mentally sound.
When you think about this police issue and then also the mental health issue, I want to kind of merge both of those together, because under the dome there were discussions or laws passed around qualified immunity that would impact this issue. I want to get your thoughts about that consent decree, the policing in general, and then specifically the mental health component is this. My daughter is 35-ish years old, high-functioning professional, corporate executive, movie, model, all of the different things. And then last year, she experienced a severe mental health issue that led to a 72-hour hold and also a diagnosis of bipolar. And so going through that experience has given our family X-ray vision as it relates to mental health. What are your thoughts around mental health red flag laws, all of the different things around mental challenges that individuals are dealing with, and you can include some of the police interactions as well. So I know that's a lot that's being said, but I'd like for you to, and we'll start with you, Mandy, to address some of what I've just spoken of.
Thank you. I want to start by saying that I actually did run a bill last session about peace officers making sure that when they pull you over, they tell you why they pull you over. It failed in committee in part because of some Democratic votes. And so as Senator Judah brought up, it is difficult when some of our policies are failing because of our own members. When it comes to the mental health piece, I mean, I have 4 kids. I don't think I mentioned that in my opening, but man, have we seen like every issue that a family can experience through that. Some of that is mental health, some of it is substance use and abuse. And that has been very eye-opening to us about the gaps that exist for services or lack thereof or difficulty in finding them. And so I'm very conscious of those things and how we fund those things or at the very least destigmatize very real things that everyday families are going through. And I know in my own case that I recognize the stigma around these things when, as a person who really is open to talking about anything, I was very hesitant to talk about these things. And I think that's part of the problem. Obviously, Aurora policing is a hot mess. The consent decree we're not seeing the changes that we need to see on that front here in Aurora. The things that we can do with the state to help that, I vote for bills all the time that are in support of police reform and things like that. And then so much of it just comes down to what we choose to do and what our city councilors choose to do here in Aurora. And so those races are actually quite important as it relates to policing, which is why I'm glad the elections turned out the way they did last year, and we have our current council.
Thank you.
So I'll start with consent decree. I suggest that everybody go and just look at the summary of the consent decree. It has like 68 to 70 issues, and they're rated on red, green, and yellow. Green means that they're in compliance, yellow, we're still not there, and red, we're failing. So overall, they're doing pretty well with the consent decree, and this is what people are not having a conversation about. Where they're failing is the same thing that we all want to change. We do not want to see Black men shot and killed in the street. And so we need to be hyper-focused about the conversations that we're having when we're talking about the consent decree. And when we can start doing that, we can then get the results that we want. So that's where I stand on the consent decree. You cannot have unarmed Black men or any people being killed by the police, right? So then how do we fix that? Some of that to me is around the mental health policy that I want to work on. This is also a part of my overall mental health because my goal is to help reduce the poverty rate in 42. It's 17% over my tenure in the House. And so as a person that has experienced this my whole life, my whole life there's been people in my family that have mental health issues. One of the things that happens is when your child is having a mental health issue or they're an adult child and you're trying to get them help, they literally have to be in full-blown crisis before they can get assistance. So policy-wise, I want to look at that too. And then, of course, I really want to get a state mental health facility in 42. The structure is good for it, and we have supportive services with other hospitals. So those would be my mental health packages while I'm in the legislature.
This is the one that everyone's been waiting for. Are you a dog person, a cat person, or neither?
Okay, I'm a super cat mom. I just am. I always have. I grew up with cats. We have a lot of cats. One of the bills I ran in the past was actually to help feral cat communities here in Aurora, funding to take care of them. But I'm a super cat lady, unabashedly. Dogs are great too. They're almost too much like children. You have to take much more care of them. And I never feel bad when I leave my house. My cats aren't at the window, but when we've dog sat, my brother's dogs, they're in the window, they look sad. We are sad to leave and then we're rushing back home. So, cat lady, 100%, all the way.
Roof, roof. I don't think that sounded real like doggish, but yeah, I have a dog, a German Shepherd. He'll be 5. We've always had dogs. We're dog people, yeah.
Just quickly, what do you love most about HD 42, and what does the future hold under your leadership?
So I grew up in Littleton, Colorado, which is one of the whitest places I've ever been. And I think that as I was an adult and could choose where I live and the kind of place I want to raise my family, my husband and I moved to Aurora, and man, am I so excited that we have such a vibrant city here in Colorado. You basically have the whole world here. Food, obviously, but as I think of the place that my kids grew up, like I said, I grew up in Littleton. My kids had a whole different and a better experience, I think, by growing up in a more diverse place. And I look at Aurora as this lovely bastion of internationalism, and I hope we can keep it that way. One of my concerns is, as Northwest Aurora specifically, is on just that city line with Denver, just south of Central Park area, of thinking of how that kind of new development is encroaching into our community and how we maintain the beauty of our community while also making room for some improvements, but that it's not erasing what makes Aurora special and unique in that process.
Yeah, I love the people. Like, I love the people. I have been having such a good time campaigning. And for all the people that have done it before, they always, look at me like I'm crazy for saying that. But I just love people in general. And then my people in Aurora, you have old people, you have all different races of people, you have some people experiencing mental health, and you could still have conversations with them and get a good laugh. Like, I just really love the people in Aurora. As a child of an African immigrant, just being here, I see so many things that remind me of my mom. And then my future for Aurora, specifically 42, is to really bring that poverty rate down. And I plan on doing that by making sure we have healthy police, making sure that our downtown becomes a destination to Denver. I love the Fox Theater, I have my season tickets. Looking at international tax credits to bring people in for more business, focusing on folks having opportunities to start buying homes through condos, and just making sure that our teachers have the support they need and that kids have teachers that are culturally competent. And so that's my overall goal, incremental change over 8 years to bring the poverty rate down.
Rather than what you would do, if you could undo or repeal one bill or one constitutional amendment, briefly, which one would you pick?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Clock is ticking.
Mine is simple, it's TABOR, because I think it's the root cause of so many of our financial struggles that we have. We could do so much more for the people of Colorado if we did not have TABOR. If it was so cool, other states would have done it. We are the only state in the country that has this really strange tax policy, and it makes the legislature's job a lot more difficult. It makes really great ideas die because we cannot fund them, and so that would be my number one.
Sarah?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I think TABOR is at the top, and I think really we have to make sure that we are intentional around explaining what TABOR even is, so that people understand what the Taxpayer Bill of Rights means and how that impacts your finances and how caps work and how funding works, because we are politicians or into politics, but not everybody cares about this stuff. So I think we just have to be intentional on explaining that to the voters so that we can change how that works.
We're down to closing statements now. And you already decided who goes first.
Yeah, well, you'll be going first, and Sarah will be giving the final.
And what's the time on this one?
1 minute.
First of all, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Brother Jeff. Thank you, Dave, for putting together this forum. I know Sarah had posted about something on social media, and I was like, heck yes, let's do it. I think this is great. Especially, it's difficult getting everybody in one building at the same time, so kudos, great thing. Most of my policy priorities literally come from my own family experience. Like I said, we have raised 4 kids. Thankfully, my youngest just turned 19. Like, high five to my husband out in the audience. We did it. We got all of those kids to adulthood. And so through that, I have just seen pretty much everything. And that is how I have experienced things, and that's how I go into the Capitol with many of my policy priorities. I came here for housing issues. Kevin and I, he is 50. I'm not 50 yet. But we cannot afford to buy a home. We are still renting in the same house that we moved into Aurora 13 years ago for all the things that I've been talking about of, like, we go to work, we make decent money, and we can't afford to live in Aurora, which traditionally was one of the most affordable places to move to. So that's what I want to continue fighting for here in Aurora, for many people like myself who want to achieve that dream.
Yes, well, I want to just say that, whether or not if you're Democrat, unaffiliated, Republican, Libertarian, I plan to represent the people of House District 42. I do not take that lightly. This is not, something that I went into thinking like, oh, how cool. This is an extreme responsibility. People are counting on their legislators to look them in the face, tell them the truth, set correct expectations, and then go and execute. And so folks can definitely know that I will be a common sense legislator. I will listen to both sides. I will do what is best for our community every single time. And I will stand on what I believe in, even if every single person in the room does not agree with me. Because that is how I've been able to thrive. That is why I'm sitting here in front of you all. And so I'm gonna ask for your vote. Ballots drop on June 8th, primaries June 30th, and try to vote early and put your ballot in the drop box. Thank you for your time. Oh, and I want to acknowledge, of course, it's Memorial Day weekend, so thank you to all the folks that have died for us to be here right now.
Let's give them a wonderful round of applause. Thank you both for sharing and Dave, wonderful conversation. We're going to transition right now. We're going to get into a conversation with, let's see where we are, Arapahoe County Commissioners. So, y'all excited about the county commissioners? Like, woo! While we transition, I'm going to ask Omar Montgomery to come down, head of the NAACP, and someone whose organization has been also instrumental in making this take place. So Omar, grab a seat real quick or do what you need to do, but everybody, Omar Montgomery.
Is it morning or afternoon? Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be here with Brother Jeff and Dave Perry. I just want to thank you both for holding this forum.